Coming at number 9 is Shindig. Mighty Fine Shindig. Honestly, this is a pretty basic episode. But I love this episode. This is a really, really good episode. It's a very charming and very likable episode. I know, it feels like I'm describing a character, not an episode, but I like this episode. This is an episode, basically, you have time to breathe and just, get involved with the characters and stuff. Basically, this episode, they land on a planet called Persephone, and they go to pretty much a ball. Yeah, basically where all the rich people go and dance and have fun and everything. And yeah, Nora is serving, sleeping with a rich guy, and he proposes to her, and she's actually thinking about accepting his proposal. But again, she has feelings for Mel. They don't go into deep with that, but yeah, she has feelings for Mel, and she doesn't probably want to do it, but yeah, the guy is insisting on it, and basically when Mel steps in, the guy gets a little pissed off and challenges Mel to a duel. And Mel thinks it's a duel with guns, but really it's a duel with swords. And yeah, the quote Zoe in this episode, yeah, I think he knows what end to hold. So yeah, this is a pretty, chilled episode. Yeah, you got the return of Badger in this episode, and you got, the duel and everything. But honestly, this is a pretty chilled episode of Firefly. But I really like it. It's a very relaxing episode. It's got some pretty good comedy. And yeah, and I also like seeing certain character interactions in this episode. Like the scene with River and Badger is probably one of the funniest scenes in this episode. And seeing Mel punch the rich guy, and the duel is very, very funny. It's supposed to be a pretty action-packed or intense moment, but really it's hilarious. It's so funny. How Mel wins the duel is just hilarious. And yeah, I like seeing him and Honora, because I really like Mel and Honora together. They don't ever end up together. Spoilers, in Serenity, they still don't end up together, but you always want them to see it, but the show fucking got canceled, so you'll never know if they ever end up together. But yeah, I loved seeing this episode. I loved seeing Mel and Honora interacting with each other. The duel was awesome. River was awesome with Badger, and I love this movie. I love this episode. It's a very good, chilled, relaxed episode. Again, not a phenomenal episode, but it's very good and chilled. I love Shindig. Coming number 8 is Jamestown. He stole from the rich and gave to the poor. The hero of Captain, the one they call Jane. This episode is freaking hilarious. Now we're into the episodes that I absolutely adore. This is one of them. I love Jamestown. Some people say Jamestown's just a filler episode. No, not at all. This is not a filler episode at all. This actually has a lot of character development for Jane. That's what I love about this episode. Jane is probably the most unlikable character on the crew, but this actually shows he has a very compassionate side to him. This shows actually he's a human. He's actually a human being, not just a fucking prick. He's actually got some kindness in him, and he actually has some ability in him. And I love hearing his story, and I loved him in this episode. Adam Baldwin, his performance was great, and I love seeing Jane actually become likable, and I loved this episode. The town was hilarious. The song is hilarious. Seeing Kaylee and Simon connect with each other was very funny. And yeah, this episode was hilarious. So freaking funny. The ending is a little sad, but I love how it ended still. It's very, very good. Very good character development for an unlikable character like Jane. Love Jamestown. Coming at number 7 is Safe. This is a straight up River and Simon episode. This actually goes a lot into character development for both characters. This shows a lot of backstory between River and Simon and their lives before Serenity. And yeah, Zac Efron plays young Simon. This is the first performance you ever see Zac Efron do in anything, any movie or show, which is pretty funny. And yeah, I loved this episode. This episode, they go into another independent planet, and Simon and River actually get kidnapped by these people, and because they desperately need a doctor. But then, because River is a psychic, so when she starts saying things people don't get, they assume River is a witch, and they actually try to burn her like it's the fucking Salem witch trial. But yeah, and then Simon has to try to save her. Then the crew, because Shepherd Books gets shot, so they have to bring him to the Alliance. They fix him up, then they have to go save Simon and River. And yeah, I really, really like this episode. This is an underrated episode. A lot of people don't talk about this episode. And they should, because this is a very good episode. Simon and River, I love Simon and River, and this is a straight-up Simon and River episode, and they're great. Sean Mayer and Summer Glau are great in this episode. I can really feel the brother and sister relationship, and I really liked it. And I like seeing more River. I like River. I find River a very fascinating character, and she had a lot of character in this episode. I love this episode. It's a very, very good episode. One of my favorites. Coming at number 6 is Bushwhacked. This right here is the introduction to the Reavers. This episode is actually pretty damn freaking creepy. This is so freaking creepy, this episode. This episode, they actually find an empty ship in space, and when they go to this empty ship, because they pretty much want to rob it, because it's empty, they find out there's actually dead bodies in this episode. Their skin was all ripped open, and they were all raped and carved open. And they're like, oh my god, there's only one thing that can do this. That is a Reavers. If you don't know the show and you don't know what Reavers are pretty much almost like creatures. They're like half creatures and humans. They were humans, but they got turned into creatures. And basically half their faces are like all ripped open. Basically, they're almost like cannibals. They're murderers. They basically rape you, carve your flesh, and then kill you. That's how they do it, and that's what a Reaver is, and they're fucking scary as shit. And what makes this episode all the more scary is you never see what the Reavers look like. The mystery of the Reavers was so freaking creepy and so terrifying. You actually see what they look like in Serenity, and they look pretty cool. But this episode was just so creepy, had some good atmosphere, and yeah, it always creeps the shit out of me, this episode. And I love it. I love Bushwhacked. It's so good. It has the Alliance, they kidnap the crew, and basically they're almost getting like killed off because one member, when they find on the empty ship, he's actually slowly turning into a Reaver, and holy shit, what's gonna happen? You'll probably know what's gonna happen, but still, this is a great episode. Very, very good. Number 5 is Serenity. This is the very, very first episode. This was a 2-hour premiere when it came out on TV. I love this episode because it is the first episode. It has all the characters, you introduce all the characters, and they're all great. As soon as this show started, I loved these characters. Okay, I did not watch this show when it first came on TV. I saw it years later, because it was only on for one season, so I barely even heard of the show. Someone finally told me about it, I watched it online, I adored it, bought the Blu-ray of both Firefly and Serenity like a week later, and ever since that, I just marathon the shit out of it all the time. And I love this episode of Serenity. It's so freaking good. Introducing to all these characters. The opening is so strong. That's how you open a show. It opens with the war between the Independents and the Alliance, and it's such a brutal war, and then you see that they lose. It's a very sad moment. And it shows that, like, Captain Malcolm Reynolds, he was a very religious person, but because he lost the war, he lost his faith in God. And that's why he's pretty much almost like an atheist and hates everyone who loves God and stuff, which I really like. I found very, very fascinating. The tragedies of war basically destroyed his religion and stuff, and which is sad. And then basically now in the future, 10 years later, he basically runs this ship Serenity, and basically he's like a smuggler. He basically steals like other things from other ships, and he does odd jobs every now and then, delivering stuff and anything. Basically, he's a freelancer, pretty much. They're smugglers, and they do some good things, and they do some bad things. But in general, all these characters are good people. They're all good characters, and yeah, it's introduced all the awesome characters like Mel, Zoe, who's his first officer, Wash the pilot, Simon and River, who are on the run from Alliance because he busted River out, and Shepherd Books, Jane, the asshole who works for them, who am I forgetting? Kaylee, the mechanic, and yeah, Enora, the companion, and yeah, basically I think I said everyone. Hope I did. If I didn't, please comment below, but still. But yeah, I introduced all these characters, and you just fell in love with them, and basically they just do one job. They just take these items in the beginning of the episode, and they're pretty much trying to sell them to someone. And yeah, and shit goes down, and basically, yeah, that's pretty much all that happens. There's not a lot happens in this episode, so some people might wonder, like, why is this one of your favorites? Because it establishes all the characters, and yeah, I love it. It's just it's got some good atmosphere, some good acting, and I like sometimes simple episodes, just characters talking and interacting with each other. I loved it. This was really good. So it had some good action, but it also had some good character development, and I loved this episode. So good, so well written, and it brought us Firefly. This is the beginning of it all. How can you not love this episode? This started it all. The greatest show of all time. Well, my favorite of all time. Coming at number 4 is Objects in Space. Yeah, this is a really, really, really good episode. This is a very well-loved episode for good reason. This is a freaking amazing episode. This is the last episode of Firefly. After this episode, the show got canceled, and then we had to wait a couple years for the movie, and then that's it. But this was a very good finale for the show. This is a good season finale. It's not a good way to end the show, period. It's just a good season finale.